Rooster here with a new episode of Soloing Secrets, and this is Michael Bloomfield. And I made the joke, about a month ago after I made the John Scofield, Mike Oldfield, and the Outfield chordplay episode. I made the joke, I think it was in the Outfield chordplay episode, I should follow this with Michael Bloomfield, and that was just a joke. But then after the fact, I thought about it, and it's like, no, I do need to make Michael Bloomfield as far as the Soloing Secrets. And I did make a chordplay episode. There's also a three-for-all surrounding Michael. And definitely a legendary guitarist, and he unfortunately died in 1981, and most players of a certain age may not know his name or his music, but they should. Definitely a dynamic, great guitarist from Chicago, which I'm also from Chicago, and Michael's career started around 1959, and then continued until he passed away in 81. Worked with a whole bunch of important people, and definitely uncovered a lot of very important licks and phrases, and targeting over blues progressions and stuff. Great guitarist, so if you're a Michael Bloomfield fan, this lesson's totally for you. So much like we've done in other episodes in the Soloing Secrets series, when you're scoping out a certain player or band, it's a great idea to check out their influences, which influence their musical ideas and directions, and kind of reveal some of the techniques and playing habits of certain players. And with Michael, there's an assortment of blues greats. Definitely he was a huge B.B. King fan. Also Freddie and Albert King too. Otis Rush, there's a whole bunch of players. But here's a list basically of Michael Bloomfield's musical influences. And as far as some of the artists and bands that Michael worked with, during his career and his lifetime, most people associate Michael Bloomfield with Bob Dylan, which definitely Michael did work with Bob Dylan historically, some very famous performances. The Newport Folk Festival, where Michael played the Telecaster that killed folk, supposedly. But then Michael also worked with Al Kooper, Paul Butterfield Blues Band, the Electric Flag, recorded with Muddy Waters and Chuck Berry, and a whole bunch of people. But here's an image showing some of the, bands and musicians that Michael worked with during his lifetime. Then as far as some of Michael's soloing secrets, the things he typically liked to do when he'd pick up a guitar and play a lick or a solo or a fill or something, and there's a lot, definitely has a lot of blues, direct blues influences. So he has traditional blues phrasing, modified blues phrasing, definitely played a lot of pentatonic based, licks and phrases, major and minor pentatonic, minor blues scale. But the big thing you really pick up from Michael, aside from the energy, the vibrato, some really interesting phrasing and stuff from him, but it's targeting over chords, hitting the right note at just the right time when the chord progression shifts or changes. That's definitely one of his trademarks, and that's something we're going to tap into in this episode. But here's an image showing some of Michael's, soloing secrets. So I wanted to include this because it's one of my favorite things I've ever found on the internet, and that is a Vintage Guitar Magazine video featuring G.E. Smith, which most of you might think of him from Hall & Oates or the Saturday Night Live Band. But G.E. Smith is playing Michael Bloomfield's famous Telecaster, the one that killed folk. And during that video, it's very, in-depth. It shows him taking the guitar out of the case. And if you're a G.E. fan, which I definitely love G.E. Smith, it's really interesting to see him turn into a teenager. And you can see the excitement, the passion. He's remembering songs and licks, and he's playing that guitar, he's talking, he's checking the guitar out, he's pulling out albums and stuff, he's talking about Michael. And it reminded me, it kind of made me feel like if I ever got to play one of Van Halen's guitars, that's kind of what it reminded me watching G.E. Smith handle and play Michael's Telecaster. I love that video. The ideas and licks in this episode actually came from 4 Michael Bloomfield-related albums, and that's one of his solo albums, also the Super Session album he cut with Al Kooper, some examples from the Paul Butterfield Blues Band album, and also an example from Electric Flag, too. So if you're a Michael Bloomfield fan, buckle up, because there's a lot of Bloomfield in this episode. Here we go. The opening jam, that's the opening solo from Don't Think About It, Baby, and that's from Michael's solo album, It's Not Killing Me. And it's basically a blues in C, so C7, and it goes to F7, back to C7, eventually G7, F7, and then C7. And I'm using the MXR clone looper there to kind of help me out, and then the solo itself was like this. basically played it pretty close. So let's break that up in phrases. So that first phrase, he's basically targeting the 6th. You know, it's a blues in C. Starts on that G note, targets A right there, which is the 6th of C. Grabs C, and then he does this double stop in the 10th fret on the G and the B. Kind of a smear on that E flat right there. Grab that C note, and then you're going to do a hammer on E flat to E and slide that E off. So that first phrase, like that, one more time. Then he does this kind of spelled out C7, like that. And he's basically spelling out that arpeggio in the beginning. You know, grab that F note, then you're going to smear bend that E flat into E. And keep in mind, that's the minor, you know, minor to major third with a bend, like that. So that first opening phrase, and then you hear, so just C minor pentatonic right there. Then he starts doing, so right there. And then you're going to do a kind of a faster version of that C7 lick, like that. And right there you're going to catch this D. You're going to basically sustain that C note there, and then transfer that C to the B string, like that. And then you're going to basically do this, and it's an index finger bend. Think Albert King right there. And then come down that C to B flat, and then this G, F, G. And then this is really cool, grabbing this F to C, and then this B flat to that G note. And then that F is going to basically move down to E. And keep in mind, that's the major third of C. So he's targeting, there we go, he's targeting that last note, you know, over the chord right there, which is so expressive, so cool. Okay, up next are 3 licks that appear in the guitar solo from Don't Think About It, Baby. And the first one, it's really, really cool, like this. One more time. So we're still in C or C7, and he starts with that bend on that B flat. And slowly that's what it looks and sounds like. And once again, he's doing that real crafty, like final bend, minor third into major third, which is kind of a Michael Bloomfield signature move right there. Like that. The second lick's this repetitive phrase. So if you cue up the solo from the song, Don't Think About It, Baby, you're going to hear that first lick first somewhere, and then later in the solo, he starts doing like a unison bend, like a separated unison bend, and then he starts doing, and he starts variating a little bit, but that's the repetitive lick right here. Right, so think C7 once again, C minor pentatonic with that major third. There's like a bend after that fretted C, then bend that B flat to C, and then you're going to bend that, or grab that C and then do a released, kind of a pre-bend and release on that B flat. Like that. And then right there you start it again. Right? And then this last lick, this is really interesting. He's flirting with that minor major third again, but he's doing it up here. You know, or something like that. And he's starting with this bend on that F. And then something like that at the end. But he's literally playing with that the major third. Because think, we're in C, and he's doing that. Next up are some licks from the song Born in Chicago. This is from the Paul Butterfield Blues Band album, and I did feature this in the Michael Bloomfield chord play episode, but now we're going to look at some of those tasty licks from this song. And Born in Chicago is like first lick's like it's like this kind of cram blues lick. So we're in A now, and he's doing like that. And then you're gonna slide into the major third, that C sharp. I'm doing that right there. And at the end, after you do that kind of crammed, slide, you're going to slide in that G to A, and then end on that C and do kind of a quick bend to C sharp, like that. So it's like that. The second lick is targeted over the chord progression, and it basically is setting up like when it goes to E, like that, and he's doing this. And right there on that last note, that's when the chord progression goes to E, like that, and it's all about timing, obviously, right there. So it's not hard to play at all, it's really simple, but it sounds awesome in there, like the way it fits in the mix and the rhythm. And then this last phrase is this crazy tone knob controlled erratic bend, like this with vibrato. And you'll hear definitely Michael do some stuff like that, like in the late 60s era. And what he's basically doing there, it kind of reminds me a little bit of Roy Buchanan, Danny Gatton, and some players like that. One more time. And it's just really erratic and crazy as far as the vibrato. But you're bending this D note to E, right? And when you bend that note, that's also when you're going to roll your tone knob all the way off. Because you definitely hear this muffly, almost like fingers in the ear kind of sound. Start that crazy, like erratic vibrato, pick it a few more times, and then open up that tone knob. Something like that. Check out that tune. It's definitely like a little later. It might be like the third verse, but you hear that fill. Really cool. Now for another example of this crazy bend in Michael's music, check out the song Swarmin, which is from the same album, the Paul Butterfield Blues Band album, and we did feature this in Michael's chord play episode, but now we're looking at this crazy bend. And Swarmin's really cool. This instrumental, it's like... something like that. And the crazy bend takes place a little later in the song, like about the midway point, and he's doing... And it's really important to realize like what's going on as far as the chord progression, because that last lick is basically when the chord goes back to C7 right there. But the first part right there, he's bending this B flat to C. And he's using that really erratic, crazy vibrato once again. He's not really doing the tone knob move, but it's the same bend with vibrato pretty much. So you're going to kind of go back and forth between that B flat and A flat. And then that F to E flat back to F. Double stop there on the first fret on the G and the B string. Grab a single F. And then this is where you're basically doing this B flat to C when the chord progression goes back to C7. You're going to do that hammer on like 7 times. I think that's right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Or maybe it's 8 times actually. Next up's the opening solo from the Electric Flags cover of Killing Floor. Definitely a blues standard for sure. And this came from the Electric Flags album A Long Time Coming. We're in A, and it's something like this. You know, something like that. One more time. Something like that. So like I said, we're in A. We're starting with this G to A bend and then fret that A on the high E. And then come down like that. So it's... And then... So it's really simple phrases, but it's the fuzzy tone he's using, that attitude when he's playing it. Right here, you know, or something like that, where he's basically targeting that minor to major third once again. And I like the way he kind of substitutes and changes the notes around. Like 1 minute it's C sharp, the next minute it's C, and he's bending it. You know, really interesting phrasing. Last but not least is a section from the opening solo from Albert's Shuffle, and this came from the Al Kooper Super Session album. And Michael Bloomfield's on side A, Stephen Stills is actually on side B. Classic record, it's on the wall right there. Albert Shuffle's the slow blues in G, you know, something like that. Just a typical 1-4-5 in G. And during that intro solo, you'll hear Michael start, and he starts kind of, you know, moving around, and then there's a point where it basically hits this, and it's very obvious. One more time, like this. And definitely Michael's digging in. It's very expressive and dynamic, and he's starting right here. And he's like knocking those notes right out of the park right there. That D to G, and then a fretted G on the B string, like that. And then doing that kind of like, you know, kind of smear bend on that B flat. And then he keeps playing with that, you know, that he keeps playing with that C and that B flat and smearing the nose. And that's really interesting to grab, you know, B flat, C, and then B. Like that. So one more time right there. And then he starts like that. Really cool, starting with a flat 5. And then like that. Alright, that's going to wrap this episode of Soloing Secrets with this look at Michael Bloomfield. Definitely a very important and influential guitarist. I've talked to lots of people over the years about Michael's music. And for me, he kind of fits in that tragedy, you know, kind of guitar, you know, chapter, I guess. Think of players like Tommy Bolin and Terry Kath and some of these, you know, tragedies. Obviously Jimi Hendrix and Stevie Ray Vaughan and some of these players, you know, where they were either killed or they OD'd or something, or they were murdered or whatever happened. And with Michael, it's sad. It's like, yeah, that's tragic. And then when you look at all the things that he did, all the musicians that he influenced, I mean, just watching that G.E. Smith video that I talked about earlier, just watching that will give you some insight as far as Michael's legacy and his importance too. And, you know, if you're a certain age, if you're older, you totally know Michael Bloomfield's name and his music. If you're younger, you may not even know any of this. And, you know, he died in 1981, so that might signal why, you know, younger people have no clue who Michael Bloomfield is or was. But you definitely should check out his music. He's very important and essential, and just a great guitarist to kind of soak up some ideas from. So anyway, leave some feedback and comments. Please subscribe to Night Lessons, and I'll be back before you know it with more content and material. Thank you.